Orlando, Florida single mother Angel Glenn does whatever it takes to support her toddler.
She was a stripper and men fawned over her.
But when she hooks up with a bad boy, Angel crosses over from a world of seduction into a life of crime.
Angel was trying to find herself and being intrigued by this young man who had money because he sold drugs.
She was very much in love with him. She had no idea that she was setting up a bloodbath.
And later, in Hershey, Pennsylvania, desperate housewife Carolyn King abandons her family in search of a fresh start, only to find her perfect match in a local convict.
They were just in love, infatuated, and smitten. I think she just wooed him in such a way that he just couldn't resist.
But it turns out to be a match made in hell for anyone who gets in the way of Carolyn and her man.
They had her stripped naked, placed the gun at her head, and pulled the trigger.
They were as thick as thieves. They would do anything for each other.
There are hundreds of thousands of women in prison at any given time in the U.S. These are the true stories of women who committed heinous crimes in the name of love. For my man. Orlando, Florida may be the happiest place on earth for some, but not for child of divorce Angel Glenn, who's kept on a short leash by her mother.
The breakup of the marriage might have caused her mom to be more sheltering of Angel.
A dutiful daughter and a model student, Angel seems to be destined for a life on the straight and narrow until puberty hits and the good girl turns into a voluptuous teenager overnight.
For Angel, growing up in a home where her father wasn't a steady influence in her life perhaps put her at risk for being a little boy crazy. In other words, trying to find her father through as many male figures as she could.
And it doesn't take long for Angel to go from discovering boys to getting pregnant.
Angel had a baby when she was 18 years old, and the father of this little boy was not involved in her life.
Where are you going? She drops out of school, but her church-going mother blames the men Angel runs with for leading her astray.
There is this tendency for good girls to like bad boys, and it seems that Angel may have fallen prey to that particular pattern.
Determined to get her on the right track, Angel's mom tells her daughter she needs to get a job to support her son or get out of the house. But Angel knows her options are limited, and the only thing she believes she has going for herself are her looks.
She's a pretty girl, and pretty girls like attention. So Angel began to perform as a stripper at private parties.
Stripping yields quick, easy cash that you would out-earn your counterparts that are working at a local drive-in or a fast food restaurant.
And it's during a night out that Angel happens to attract the attention of 22-year-old twin brothers, Dante and Dante Hall.
They're very, very difficult to tell apart. The only distinctive feature is Dante has a tattoo on his neck, and it says, "Money ain't a thing."
Despite Dante's best efforts, Angel finds herself drawn to Dante, who seems to be the one in charge.
Dante was the more aggressive and certainly the more assertive of the two, and the two of them were dedicated to each other, but basically Dante followed Dante's lead.
Angel was very attracted to Dante because, unlike his twin, Dante was much, much more aggressive, much more the bad boy, and certainly Angel had this very rebellious spirit.
Not only are the Hall brothers identical twins, they share the same profession. Both are major cocaine dealers with a reputation for ruthlessness that is well known and feared throughout all of Orlando.
They had developed a certain clientele among the crack users in particular. And so people knew that if you wanted to buy crack, that you would go to see Dante and Dante.
Dante had this danger in his lifestyle that she just was drawn to.
The attraction is instant and mutual, and Angel and Dante dive into a relationship that lasts the entire summer.
They stayed together at various motels. and would get together as much as they could.
Angel seems at ease as the girlfriend of a notorious drug dealer, leaving her son with her mother for long stretches to spend more time with Dante, who has now graduated from merely dealing drugs to robbing other drug dealers.
The one thing about choosing criminals as your victims is that criminals don't typically call the police for help.
Dante finds another way to make money as well, by helping himself to a cut of the money Angel makes from dancing.
And this became an opportunity for Angel to embed herself into his life, to be able to take care of him and give him the things that would sustain him.
Life goes on this way for several weeks. Until one day, when Angel receives a call from a man named Billy Robinson, a potential client Angel met a few days earlier.
Billy and Angel met in Orlando, and Angel made it clear that she was willing to dance for money.
So you all are going to take care of us then?
And so through Billy, this party got set up for Friday night at a place in Eustis, which is about an hour's drive away from Orlando. At one point, Billy told her, "You be sure to get your girls because we're going to be giving you a lot of money."
Dante is present and is overhearing both sides of the conversation via the speakerphone.
After hearing the phone call, Dante's thinking, guys with all that money to spend on strippers, they must be rolling in cash.
And Dante, the consummate businessman, comes up with a plan. He and his crew will rob the party, and Angel will serve as bait.
She willingly went along with it because that was her boyfriend, and Angel, at one level, understood that her boyfriend was potentially dangerous.
In Orlando, Florida, private dancer Angel Glenn and her boyfriend Dante Hall plan to rob a party of one of Angel's clients. All she has to do is follow Dante's lead.
Once Angel is inside the party, Dante and friends will enter the party to rob the patrons there.
Girl, get up. What are you doing?
That afternoon, Angel calls two girlfriends she's worked with before to dance at the party with her, while Dante calls his brother and they plan the robbery. Later that night, Angel and the girls make the hour-long drive to Eustis, followed by Dante, and a neighborhood friend.
Angel did not convey to the other dancers that a robbery was about to take place.
In no time, Angel and the girls are on the scene in Eustis, and the party is underway, while Dante and his crew sit tight in a car down the street.
The girls had started dancing, the guys were drinking, there was a little drug use in the party. So it was a very festive atmosphere.
But Angel never forgets the real why and who she's there for.
There were a number of phone calls back and forth between Dante and Angel. Dante was asking her, how many guys are there? Do they have guns? What room are you guys in? And he instructed her to try to entice everybody into one place, because of course it would be easier for them to control the crowd if they were all in one spot. So she did as she was instructed.
Girls were dancing, the girls were being tipped, the guys were drinking, they were laughing, joking, having a good time.
When Angel has everything set just the way Dante wants it, that's when he and his crew make their entrance.
Dante was the first one in the house, and he was armed with an assault rifle, an AK-47, which on the street they call a chapa. And right behind him were his brother, Dante, and a third guy carrying 9mm pistols. And Dante ordered everybody to get on the ground. He said that if they didn't do what they were told, he was going to make this chapa dance.
Angel hits the floor with everyone else. And while she may be the one who set all this up, even she isn't prepared for what happens next.
Then as they were on the floor, they were also reaching for the money and the jewelry that they wanted for a reason that is still really not clear, other than the fact that perhaps he wanted to get the partygoers to understand he was serious. Dante fires off a couple rounds with the AK-47.
Dante fires at the concrete ceiling and the bullets ricochet, hitting several partygoers, killing a man named Anthony Blunt.
Dante continued to spray the place. His girlfriend, Angel, was in just as much danger as any of the other partygoers or the other dancers.
He disregards her safety, and that should have been a moment for Angel to have a second thought about the relationship that she has with Dante.
She probably didn't think that Dante was capable of such acts at that moment because she loved him.
So far, the take from the robbery is just under $1,500 and some jewelry, much less than Dante expected. He's not happy.
And he and his friends fired off a few rounds to emphasize that they meant business and they wanted the rest of the money. Keeson Evans, who was one of the higher-ups in the group, said, "All right, you want more money?
It's in the back of the shoebox."
Dante sends Dante to look for the money, which doesn't really exist.
Yo, nothing here.
When Dante returns to the main room empty-handed, Angel sees just how far Dante's willing to take this.
He's angry at the fact that one of the partygoers lied to him, and so at that moment he decides to teach a guy a lesson.
He locates Keeson and shoots him in the head.
Realizing there isn't going to be a larger payoff, Dante and his crew take off, leaving the girls behind.
I believe Angel was caught off guard, and that although she knew she was helping her boyfriend come in and rob some folks who were just there to party, she did not expect that people were going to die as a result of it.
In all, 5 men were shot, 4 by ricocheting bullets, 1 fatally. And Keeson Evans was executed.
It's a complete miracle that anybody walked out of there. The fact that you had someone who was firing off an AK-47, it's amazing that anybody left that room.
Angel and the other girls, both in shock, flee the scene. On their way back to Orlando, Angel comes clean with her fellow dancers and admits to helping set up the robbery.
One of the girls says, "You're stupid. Why did you ever endanger our lives like this? You could have been killed. We could have been killed. Why would you do something like that?"
Angel says something like, "This is how Dante and I make money now."
Here is Angel involved in a situation where people were hurt and killed, and she's bragging about it to all of them. And this speaks to me of a process of dissociation.
After the girls make it back to Orlando, Angel and Dante reconnect.
She saw up close and personal what Dante was capable of doing. She was definitely afraid.
I think she realized what she stood to lose. 2 days later, one of the dancers provided the law enforcement officers with a break in the case.
And in the aftermath of their robbery gone wrong, Angel Glenn and Dante Hall are forced to choose between love or self-preservation. And later in Hershey, Pennsylvania, Carolyn King finds her soulmate in a soulless ex-con.
She's getting a high, she's getting excitement, she's getting a thrill. And so sometimes people keep seeking that pleasure, so they engage in the crime over and over again.
The robbery that Angel Glenn set up led to 5 men being shot, including one man who had an estimated 20 entrance and exit wounds, and he still survived. What began as a raucous house party in Eustis, Florida, turned into a bloodbath after a robbery gone wrong, orchestrated by stripper Angel Glenn and her boyfriend Dante Hall. Having made off with less than $1,500 in cash and some watches, gold chains, and rings, a disgruntled Dante orders Angel to pawn the jewelry.
Dante has an outstanding warrant for murder. And so if he were to pawn something in his name, that's something that might turn up in the system that shows that he is, 1, local, and 2, that he's been involved in a serious robbery where people died.
Angel does what she's told, sacrificing her anonymity and risking her freedom to please the love of her life.
It is a pretty stupid thing to do for Angel to put her name on a pawn slip for goods that are tied to a homicide.
It's quite clear from a psychological point of view that Angel just stopped thinking. She was just invested in this relationship with Dante, and she just was not looking at what her actions were and what the consequences were going to be.
But it's not the jewelry that implicates the couple. It's one of the other dancers who comes forward 3 nights after the robbery.
Danielle, one of the dancers, hears that 2 people died in the robbery, and she goes to the police to say that Angel and her boyfriend Dante were involved in the robbery where the 2 people died.
This was our first break in this case. Up until then, this was truly a whodunit.
2 days later, police track Angel down and bring her in for questioning. Dante is nowhere to be found.
I don't feel like talking right now.
The interrogation went on for several hours, and her demeanor was defiant and deceptive throughout.
Angel lied multiple times to the law enforcement officers, saying that she didn't have any information, and then once she said that she did have some information, she kept saying that Dante wasn't involved.
Angel lied to protect Dante several times during the investigation. Eventually, she went on to say that she lied only to protect her family, but it appears she lied in reality only to get more of Dante's love and to prove to him that she was worthy of all of his affection and love.
Angel quickly changes her mind upon learning she could face the death penalty.
In Florida, even though she didn't squeeze the trigger, didn't want anybody to be shot, she was instrumental in the robbery during which somebody got shot. And as a result, she is legally responsible for the homicides.
With the possibility of lethal injection or a life sentence in front of her, Angel Glenn strikes a deal. She confesses to setting up the robbery and gives police the name of the motel where Dante is currently hiding out.
Her mother influenced her to cooperate because her mom could talk to her about the possibility of never being able to see her son on the outside again, and that she would never get to raise him. And I'm sure that the maternal instinct at some point had an impact on her decision to cooperate.
Dante and his twin are arrested without incident. Angel is released on bond, with one of the conditions being that she not have any contact with Dante, who sits in jail awaiting trial. But Angel still loves him too much to stay away.
Dante received a number of letters from her, including photos, and one of them, she's got her ankle monitor on at the time, so we know that the picture was taken while she was out on bond.
Angel wanted to have her cake and eat it too. On the one hand, she still wanted to be part of Dante's life, even though she was told not to be in contact with him. But on the other hand, she also wanted her freedom, which is something that she had.
For violating the terms of her release, Angel is thrown back in jail, where she remains for several months until the Hall brothers go on trial.
There was no further communication of any sort between them.
Thanks to Angel's testimony, Dante and Dante Hall are found guilty on 2 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, armed robbery, and conspiracy. Dante is sentenced to death and is currently on death row. Dante gets life without parole. It's now Angel Glenn's turn to face the music. She's sentenced to 10 years for conspiracy to commit murder.
She did express that she was sorry for what happened. I think she was in love with the idea of being in love, and Dante embodied power for her, and she was attracted to the power.
Looking at Angel Glenn in her situation, is she a threat to society? Probably not by herself. But however, watch out, because if she gets with someone who is dangerous, then that can have some really bad consequences.
When I first met Angel, she was a wannabe thug girlfriend. And soon that facade of the hard street girl fell away because that really wasn't her lifestyle. The real Angel is actually a pretty nice person.
Angel Glenn's desire for adventure in her life drove her to commit senseless acts in the name of love. A fate destined to be shared by Hershey, Pennsylvania transplant Carolyn King, who falls for a man she's willing to do anything to hold on to. Raised by her grandparents in Virginia, Carolyn King's early years aren't the most ideal.
She grew up in a family that they didn't have the most money. There were some issues of sexual abuse, even I think some drug abuse involved.
Looking to correct a void in her life, Carolyn gets married at 20 and has 2 children. But after 6 years of marriage, she feels like her best years are falling behind her. At 26, Carolyn walks out on her family and hits the road in search of something new.
Having kids isn't something that you can undo. She must have felt trapped. Something must have been really wrong in that marriage or with Carolyn herself.
What we call it in the field is structural dislocation. When either by force or by choice, somebody, they have attachment to their family, but it's not a true attachment, and they just up and leave and abandon them. And this is what we see with Carolyn.
But with limited means and no reliable transportation, Carolyn doesn't get very far, only making it to Hershey, Pennsylvania, some 200 miles away.
And she got a job working in a plant that broke down bulk candy into smaller packaging for retail purposes.
She didn't have family there. She didn't have friends there. She really had no contacts or connection.
The only thing Carolyn has is a job so routine, it leaves the restless 26-year-old wanting more. A desire shared by 20-year-old Brad Martin, a recent hire at the factory who helps take some of the edge off.
Brad was a handsome young man. You know, he was tall, very young, good-looking guy.
Still relatively new to the job herself, Carolyn forges an instant bond with Brad, who also happens to be serving time at the Lebanon County Prison just up the road.
Brad had been in and out of the county prison for a variety of drug charges, a burglary charge, and violated the terms of that probation and was reincarcerated for that.
He was serving a sentence of 6 to 23 months.
He was granted work release privileges that allowed him to go out and work for an 8-hour day and then return to the prison for overnight.
Though only on the job a few weeks, Brad has already made a new friend in Carolyn.
They started to develop a relationship, more than just a working relationship. They developed a romantic relationship.
She really liked him, and it didn't matter that he was on work release.
Carolyn thinks bad boy Bradley is just the ticket out of her humdrum life, and she's about to show just how far she's willing to go to keep this young man around.
They were willing to sacrifice any and everything, including someone else's life.
Carolyn was in love with Bradley. She was under the influence of Bradley Martin.
In Hershey, Pennsylvania, 26-year-old Carolyn King falls head over heels for 20-year-old convict Brad Martin.
Carolyn was a good-looking African-American woman. Brad was a handsome young man. So, of course, there's those sexual urges.
But with their encounters limited to the workplace, tensions between them are about to reach a breaking point. So Brad puts in a request at the prison for a 4-hour furlough. Based on his good behavior, his request is granted.
Carolyn met Brad at the prison, and they went over to a motel that was fairly close.
The encounter is unlike anything either has experienced before.
We need to do this more often.
And it leaves Carolyn wanting more.
The intimacy that Carolyn and Brad had must have been so intense that they immediately formed this bond and needed one another, became dependent on one another. There was just absolutely no way that they were going to give up this relationship.
But there's only one way Carolyn and Brad can be together.
At the motel, they decided that Brad was not going to return to prison.
Carolyn has found what she was looking for, a new man. And she's determined not to let him go.
I can only speculate that it was Carolyn's ideal that he not return.
We don't have money, where are we gonna go?
Brad had a relatively short period of time to go till the completion of his probation violation and his release.
Carolyn and Brad want a fresh start, and to do that, they need money. Brad knows an easy mark, who they should be able to charm into helping them. 74-year-old retired florist, Guy Goodman, who lives in Palmyra, just one town over.
Guy was involved in the prison outreach through his church. That's how he got to meet Brad, and he was really just trying to help him.
Hey, Guy, it's Brad.
Brad tells Guy he's on a furlough and wants to see him. He takes the bait and invites Brad over.
Guy had written several letters to Brad and had gone to visit him at the county prison on a couple of occasions, trying to get Brad back on a correct path.
Carolyn and Brad hitch a ride to Guy's home, just a few miles from the motel.
I believe they shared some coffee. But somewhere during that meeting, the conversation changed from, how are you doing, to, I need money, I need you to help me.
I need some money.
Guy tried to reason with him, tried to get him to go back to the prison.
But by now, Brad has already missed his scheduled return time, making him a fugitive. He and Carolyn know they have to get out of Pennsylvania.
Brad kept asking for money to get out of town. Guy kept insisting that he should return to the prison and get his life straightened out.
And Bradley became angry and picked up a vase and hit him with it.
Guy Goodman is struck over the head with the vase, which knocks him to the floor, opens a pretty large gash and wound in the back of his head.
They took a telephone cord, wrapped it around his neck, tied it to his hands, and then also to his feet.
At the same time, they took a sheet of plastic and wrapped him in the sheet of plastic, then took a bedspread and wrapped that around him, and then a terry cloth robe that was wrapped around the exterior of all of that.
The brutality perpetrated against Guy by these two individuals, in many ways, was a representation as to what they felt was an obstacle that had been put in their way by society, by their past, and they would do anything at this point to keep moving on together in the future, even if it meant eliminating Guy brutally.
Leaving Guy Goodman to suffocate, Carolyn and Brad hunt around the house to get what they came for.
While he was dying, Carolyn and Brad pretty much ransacked the house.
They found his credit card, grabbed some checks out of his checkbook, found his car keys, and left.
In less than an hour, Carolyn and Brad have left Guy for dead, stolen his money and his car, and are on the run. With no destination in mind, other than the need to get out of Pennsylvania, they head west.
They took his car and started driving, using his credit card, using his checkbook along the way.
They were shopping sprees, buying purses, cosmetics, just town after town after town.
Even though they're on the run, their desire for one another can't be denied.
They also spent money on women's undergarments. They would just go to stores and buy all of this stuff.
Brad's involved with this slightly older woman, Carolyn, and she has her feminine ways and feminine wiles. And so she knows by buying all this sexy lingerie, this is a way that she could represent herself to the utmost.
10 days later, Guy's body is found by a concerned neighbor, and police are called. Already on the lookout for escaped prisoner Brad Martin, it doesn't take long for detectives to put two and two together.
Guy had sent letters, and he also did a couple of visits to Brad while he was incarcerated.
We went back to the county, looked and learned that there was written correspondence as well as visits between Guy and Bradley Martin, which gave us a pretty good lead that it was Bradley Martin who may have done this.
Now with Hershey police hot on their heels, the fugitives must stay one step ahead of authorities, and there's no end to the violence they will perpetrate.
They shot her, left her naked, alone, hoping that the coyotes and other animals would dispose of the body.
What Carolyn did for Brad can never be undone.
Love-struck murderers Carolyn King and Bradley Martin are on the lam after killing 74-year-old florist Guy Goodman in Palmyra, Pennsylvania. Still riding on Guy's dime, Carolyn and Brad make it to North Dakota when they decide to head south to Mexico.
It's not a short drive from North Dakota, and this was funded from Guy's credit cards.
But they don't get far, thanks to a vigilant motel clerk in Bismarck, North Dakota, suspicious of the couple who claimed to have no photo ID.
They attempted to check into a motel, and a clerk there had questioned the authenticity of and validity of their utilizing the card and pushed a code into the system which stopped its usage.
The couple then tries to use one of Guy Goodman's checks, only to find out his accounts have been closed. With rapidly diminishing funds, the two are pushed to the point of desperation.
They needed money, they needed it bad, and they weren't afraid to do whatever they had to.
Having killed Guy Goodman, Carolyn and Brad know they have nothing to lose when they spot 59-year-old vacationer Donna Martz.
Donna lived in Devil's Lake, which was a couple of hours away from Bismarck, so she was traveling alone. She was well-dressed. She looked well-to-do.
They saw Donna Martz as another source to finance their escape. They followed her down the hallway.
As Donna arrived at her door and put the key in to unlock it, they came up behind her.
Carolyn pulls a knife on Donna and tells her to do what they say and nobody will get hurt.
Donna Martz had a car, plus she probably also had a fresh supply of money, credit cards, checks, maybe in cash.
They wanted to get to where they wanted to get, start a new life, and live happily ever after. And Donald just happened to be that one person there at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Carolyn and Brad force the petrified Donna into the trunk and take off south toward Mexico, one step closer to their dream of a life together. Over the next 5 days, Carolyn and Brad go on another spending spree, courtesy of Donna Martz. She's still in the trunk, surviving on what little food and water they give her.
They simply kept her alive, bound in the car, so that they could continue to use the resources of her credit cards and her cash.
They forced her to give them her PIN number. They went to the ATM, used her PIN to withdraw cash.
But after days in the trunk, a desperate Donna reaches her breaking point.
So she starts to make noise. And if you're in a parking lot at a mall or any type of store, that should get the attention of somebody. Unfortunately, it just got the attention of Brad and Carolyn.
A furious Carolyn gets behind the wheel and drives out to the middle of nowhere.
Carolyn and Bradley, who had kept Donna alive so they could use her funds, now reach a tipping point with her. She's acting out in the trunk, trying to draw attention to her plight, and she could possibly get them caught. And so at this point, they become enraged with her.
They pull her out of the trunk, they stab her, they make her strip naked.
And Donna's nightmare doesn't end there.
Only people without a conscience can take the life of a person so callously and leave them for the vermin to dispose of their transgressions. Carolyn had told Brad that she was primarily a Native American Indian, and they were going to North Dakota to see her father on the reservation. It was not true, but it was one of Carolyn's means by which to control and manipulate Brad. So it gave them a destination to go head towards, was North Dakota.
Carolyn King and her boyfriend Bradley Martin take their multi-state crime spree to a whole new level in North Dakota when their hostage Donna Martz tries to get away.
They were very angry, and they sped away from the parking lot with Donna still in the trunk of the car and traveled down the interstate highway, got off, got Donna Martz out of the car, and had her stripped naked.
As Carolyn watches, Brad rapes Donna.
Carolyn, by allowing him to be able to do something so heinous to this woman, in many ways, Carolyn was raping this woman too.
They were able to purchase a gun while they were on the road.
They then placed the gun at her head. They then shot her, left her naked, alone, hoping that the coyotes and other animals would dispose of the body. And they proceeded on their way.
After killing Donna, they get back in her car, heading south to Mexico. Meanwhile, law enforcement across the country is teaming up to catch them.
Donna was reported missing when she didn't arrive home when she was supposed to. So naturally, her family, they became concerned.
Carolyn and Brad don't know it, but by the time they reach Nevada, the FBI agents working the Guy Goodman case have tracked them to the Bismarck Hotel in North Dakota, where Donna disappeared. And with the help of local law enforcement, they connect the dots between the two cases.
You had the local police departments from Pennsylvania collaborating with local police departments in Bismarck, collaborating with the FBI and federal agencies, all on a manhunt to track down Brad and Carolyn. And most of that was because they still figured, hey, if we track them down, there's a chance that Donna may be alive.
The task force calls every police department from the Canadian border to the Mexican border, with orders to find Donna's car. Their canvassing pays off only a few days later, once the couple reaches California.
Outside of San Diego, a California highway patrolman spotted their car.
As he got closer, the car began to speed up.
A desperate Carolyn knows if she and Brad are caught, they can kiss any dream of a life together goodbye.
Carolyn was driving the car, weaving in and out of traffic, going through stop signs and stoplights.
The chase comes to a violent end when Carolyn speeds through an intersection and is T-boned by another car. Carolyn and Brad survive the collision unharmed and are taken into custody. That afternoon, Brad gives up the location of Donna Martz's body, and 2 days later, her remains are found. Under hours of questioning, their stories don't match up.
Brad basically admitted that, yes, he was involved. He and Carolyn had committed these acts together.
But the hot seat doesn't intimidate Carolyn, who claims she was there in the name of love.
Carolyn's focus seemed to have been that she was an unwitting non-participant just along for the ride, and that this was all Bradley Martin who did all of these acts, and that she was just an innocent babe.
Carolyn's apparent narcissism is fed in so many different ways. She leaves her children, she gets involved in these horrific crimes, but then at the end, just to trump all of this, she turns on Brad, the guy that she was controlling and supposedly had this intense relationship with.
Carolyn and Brad are extradited to Pennsylvania for the murder of Guy Goodman. In jail awaiting her court date, Carolyn King gets some unexpected news.
It was discovered that Carolyn was pregnant,
9 months later, Carolyn gives birth in custody to Brad's son. It's the first and last time she will ever see him. Tried separately for the murder of Guy Goodman, Carolyn and Brad are found guilty, and both are sentenced to death. The pair pleads guilty and receives life in prison for the murder of Donna Martz.
The right thing was the implementation of the death sentence. The families of Guy Goodman and Donna Martz now at least have a final chapter.
Post-conviction, the one-time lovers display noticeably different behavior.
When Bradley Martin was sentenced, there was indications that he did feel remorse for what had happened.
Carolyn expressed no remorse about any of the activities. Her focus seemed to have been that she was an unwitting non-participant.
She walked out of her marriage, she walked away from her kids, looking for adventure in her life, and boy, did she find it.
Many people might think that there was a drastic change from working an honest job to going on a killing spree, that people don't operate in a vacuum. This woman was a ticking time bomb, indicative of someone who was mentally unstable for quite some time, and we saw the consequences of that.